Welcome to Seymour from the Front Pew podcast, coming to you from the broadcast studio at Seymour First Baptist Church in Seymour, Tennessee, and featuring thoughts and discussions around loving God, loving others, making disciples, and living the life. I am your host, Tiger Brooks, and now, on to the podcast.
You've heard of Jesus walking on water. Here he is balancing on a computer screen.
That's impressive, Corey.
Careful, you're gonna...
Oh, man. How are y'all balancing these? Am I that shaky? What the...
Well, I did it sideways. You did it the other way.
Are these the swine that
Jesus
survived
cast the demons into...
They survived the fall into the sea.
We've had that scene going on for forever.
Anyway.
Put Jesus in the pig.
Where'd the pigs come from? I know where the Jesuses come from, but where'd the pigs come from?
I have no idea.
Little things just show up around church occasionally. Somebody's like...
These pigs have been in here for a year.
Somebody just has a Oriental trading account, and they just buy what's on sale, and they distribute them about the church.
So we need it. How long's this going to stay?
I was really hungry.
I'd say the expiration date.
9 months ago.
What's the expiration date on that?
Brought it in, but they never ate it.
We have
September.
For those of you just listening,
we have nobody to blame but ourselves. Nobody else comes in this room.
Nope.
For those of you just listening to the audio version of this is a Nature Valley peanut butter dark chocolate protein bar that's been in our podcast studio for months.
Yeah, and it's now past its expiration date.
No,
Is
it's
it?
not.
It's September.
All right, chunk it.
25.
Throw it in the can. Where's the
God,
can?
that's got to be really old.
Yeah.
I thought those things were good for like 3 years.
No, they're not. They're
What's
not.
in them?
They're not prepper quality.
Bioengineered food ingredients.
Yeah, and that's supposed to be healthy.
All right.
Hold this up.
Here we are. We're back on food again.
What I did at 8.
We just started. We're back on
Everything
food.
we
at
do
our
is
church.
about food.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was just, trying to pull some things that I've done before for that.
That's funny.
It's funny. Yeah, so anyway.
Oh, that was a bad weekend for me.
All right. So, referring back to the aforementioned list of topics that the lovely and talented Miss Kelly Maynor had taken some time to suggest some topics for us, and we thought this one was very appropriate and very timely. And we didn't want to do it last week without our fearless leader being present.
Y'all were afraid you'd get yourselves in trouble.
No, I was prepared to go forward. They were scared.
Yeah.
And
It's not so much that I would get in trouble.
yeah, it is.
Okay, fired.
It's that you would have to answer for the answers that I gave.
So
I'll give you an opportunity to defend yourself.
here is the topic du jour, and that is deacons. We are at the time of deacon elections. We are in the midst of it. We have received several nominations, and so we appreciate you taking the time to fill out the nomination form, which is it's available online. There's a QR code in the bulletin, and you can go on there and fill it out and make your nomination. And we're going to talk about just the office of deacons, biblically speaking, what that means, what is a deacon, what is the role of the deacon in the church. And so, Corey, why don't you
And what
share
is
with
not
us?
a deacon, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What deacons do and what deacons don't do according to Scripture.
Man, that just like,
Yeah.
boom. Like, anyway, well,
That's why we
for
waited.
me- yeah, I know. For me, one is I always like to, so I've been in full-time ministry for somewhere around 25 years, a little over, and been pastoring now for like lead pastor or pastor of a church for 20 years. And first is to say, like, I've served with some great men, like great people that have been a part of that process. And only in few occasions have I seen or been in bad situations with those types of things. And typically what those are misconceptions around what the office is or what the role is. And so I do always think it's important to kind of start with what the role is. What is it supposed to be? Because what has happened in Baptist life, and I don't put this on the deacons, just to be honest with you, what has happened in Baptist life is that oftentimes the role has been transformed, changed, altered, usually over a period of time. And often what I've seen, or what I feel like I see, is that it was altered. All right, so typically deacons are supposed to be servants. We'll just start with that.
Yes,
that they're the role of a
that's
servant.
literally what it means.
So they are to be serving the church. Specifically, they're to be serving and helping even like the pastor and the extension of the ministry of the pastor. But, okay, I'm going to play this out in most Baptist life. Well, so what happens when there's not a pastor there?
Yeah.
And so what happens when the pastor isn't setting vision? What happens when the pastor isn't deciding these things or doing these things or leading or guiding or doing and all? And I hate to put that like on me, but that really, when the role of the deacon is not right in most Baptist churches, it is. But I think you can trace that lineage back to, not failures, maybe absences of the pastor. Because they are not the same office, they are not the same roles, but yet the office of the servant is often taken on roles that they weren't intended to do because somebody else wasn't there or wasn't doing them.
Yeah.
And so, again, if we continue to play that out just for a minute, I don't want to go down this road the whole time, but the average stay of a pastor is something like 30 to 40 months. It's not this. Again, almost all of us have beaten that, So, I mean, so put that, I know churches that it was like every 2 years. There was a pastor here, pastor gone, pastor here, pastor gone, pastor here. Well, what do you do? Where's stability come from? Yeah. Where's leadership come from? Where's vision come from? How? Well, I mean, unfortunately, it meant that those men who were in those roles had to fulfill that for the stability of the church. And it wasn't what is intended, but it is what became. And then in that, once you are fulfilling a role, it's hard to give those roles up oftentimes. Yeah. And especially if there's not trust built up in that. And so, so I think that really is a part of where it goes wrong, and maybe even a part of where deacons get a bad name or a bad rap or whatever else, and all those things. And
just the confusion
over all of those types of things. Yeah. And confusion over what you're supposed to be, what you're not. And then you throw in Baptist polity, which, again, as a whole, I think our Constitution and bylaws are really, really good, but I've also seen a bunch that are not. I mean, or they don't have any, or they're so vague that you can interpret it any way you want to, and so there's all kinds of other things that go wrong in all of that, and which leads to, again, this nomination process for us is I want to always be and take these things very serious.
Yeah.
Biblically, where do we see the role of a deacon end? When does it come to an end? I've got a really hard time making a case that it ends in 3 years, because that's when the calendar rolls off.
Right.
I don't think my role as a pastor comes to an end, just because I'm not serving this church or that church or whatever else. I mean, now, again, I think God is going to call, what I've seen in my life is that God calls me to a place for a period of time, and then he begins to change that in my life or whatever else. But a deacon role, again, I don't want it to be limited by our church constitution. I want it to be limited biblically. I want it to be guided biblically. What are we doing? What do we see? How's that supposed to be fulfilled? What's supposed to be done there? And all those types of things. Yeah.
I would venture to guess, this is not what I'm about to say is not a reflection of anything that's happened here in the past, but I think just in a general sense, the same thing that led to deacons kind of taking on a leadership vision setting role in some churches was the void or the vacuum that was created when a pastor left.
Right.
Because the deacons are going to generally be there. Deacons are members of the community that have always been there and lived there. And whereas pastors kind of come and go, because you generally, not in all senses, but, like I served as a pastor in an area where I grew up and lived for 20 plus years. And so that's an exception from the law. Usually a guy comes in, he'll be there for a minute time, and then he'll go. And then in that void, if you don't have strong leadership that can say, hey, we're going to limit ourselves in our powers, so to speak, but we're going to provide leadership because there is none right now until we get another pastor. Anyway, the same thing that led to that, I think, leads to the term of office that people have put in there arbitrarily. And sometimes it's 3 years, sometimes it's 5 years. And I think that people said, hey, we've had some bad experiences with some deacons. Let's put term limits on it.
To mitigate their
time. They won't have the time to establish this negative direction. And so,
or we have an out, they're going to roll off.
Right. Right.
And I do, even with what I said, as far as the idea of when does it come, I do think there's a time where it does come to a close. There is a reality that the role is to serve.
Yeah.
There are times where our capacity to serve changes. And that is not an age-restricted type of thing, and maybe not even a health-restricted type of thing. I have great respect for men that may serve as deacons early in their life, but realize when they come into the busyness and craziness of their families that I can no longer serve the way I need to inside the life of a church.
For a season, they'll say.
I may need to step away for a season or for a time. And again, the same way as we get older, there's a role of service to be played and filled, and that if a deacon is not doing that role of service, then I think you have to begin to question, am I still called to serve in this capacity? But it's not because I put a 3-year time span on it, or 5-year, whatever it says. Like that's my thing, is like, let's look at what the role and function should be inside the life of the church. If I'm fulfilling that, then I think there's a reason to stay. And even our we'll dive in more, I'm sure, but our Constitution says that deacons will serve on a rotational basis, and they do. But what happens is at the end of that rotation, if they still feel led and able, and the deacon body feels like they are still able to continue to serve, then they are re-upped, if you will. And we fill vacancies and we fill holes, or we add to as we need to, which is also laid out in the Constitution for us to be able to do that. And so there is a way for that to all function together healthily. But really, I think it all hinges on role and function.
Yeah.
Are we serving it in a correct role and function?
Yeah. So I want to read this, and please hear me. I've only been here for 3 years, little plus, so I have no idea who put this together. And so I'm not casting aspersions, but I want to read the opening sentence of the description of deacons, section 3 of the convention, or the Constitution and bylaws. And I'll let you draw your own conclusions as to what might have led to this. It says this: the deacon is a servant, not a church boss or manager. Hence, it would be inappropriate for a deacon to issue a mandate to the church.
One is whatever led to it then.
Right.
We don't have
that is exactly right. I cannot say enough good about how our deacons at least approach and understand their office of what it's supposed to be.
And honestly, even inside of our deacon body right now, and again, I don't want to put this at if there is a frustration, it is that at times they are struggling to serve the needs of the church. So whether that be time or ability or whatever else, and man, to me, I love that that's the frustration.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're not frustrated because, they're not setting vision. They're not frustrated because they're not giving recommendations at church conference. They're not frustrated because they're not asked about this decision or whatever else. They're frustrated because, we're struggling to keep up with the needs inside the life of the church. We're struggling to make sure that these things are done and whatever else. And man, what a blessing that is, that
we can handle that issue.
The role is seen clearly, is that this is what we are to be doing. This is how we're supposed to be going. And so again, we tie that frustration with these nominations that are going on inside of our church right now, is that these nominations need to be people who are willing to serve and have the time to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the role that needs to be fulfilled within our deacon body right now. They need more people who are able and willing to serve. That means time. That means a willingness to do the grunt work and the dirty work. It means the willingness to be here on a Saturday or to slip out on Wednesday night and not be in a class or whatever else, because those are the roles that need to be filled right now. And what's going on is we need we need men and servants who will clean up the kitchen when it needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we go back to, all right, so what's the role of a deacon? Back New Testament Greek wise, that role, that word there, serve as a deacon in this passage literally means through the dirt, all right? Mm-hmm. That they will serve through the dirt. So like, it's not glamorous. Mm-hmm. It is literally one willing to get dirty in service is what that's talking about. Mm-hmm. And so like when we talk about who we're going to nominate, what we're going to do, what this is going to look like, I think we need to remember that because it's not going to be glamorous. And it doesn't fit everybody. Not everybody, not every good man, not every good person needs to serve as a deacon. Yeah. Because it's hard to do that.
Yeah. There are there are qualified individuals in the church who, by looking at the deacon description of what a deacon is and looking at their life, they would emulate that in their lives. But not all of them, not all of those who are qualified are in a season where it would be prudent for them to serve because they've got family, they've got kids that are involved in stuff. They've got other obligations that for them is a higher, it's a higher obligation than serving as a deacon of the church. And so, that's why, I don't know how many nominations we will get, but not all of those individuals are in a season where it would be prudent for them to serve. Is that fair? Yeah. And it's not a judgment on them. No, it's just a reality of the situation they find themselves in.
Right. And I think the self-realization to say this is a season and time where I am able to do this, or not able to do this. Those are the types of things that we that need to be evaluated in order for us to be functioning healthily with our deacon body and with our group that's there. So
yeah.
All right.
Y'all want to jump in anytime?
I mean, to me, just thinking about what you guys are saying there too, in our nomination side of things, I think there are some guys in the life of the church that, not necessarily specifics that I'm thinking, but they still go back to the status of deaconhood. Does that make sense? That to be elected as a deacon is, they're thinking in it from the perspective that I think we've all been in churches that have had deacons in a less than biblical fashion. That they are more what I would call the overseers. They're in more of that kind of a role than the role of a deacon. And so because of that, in their minds, they're thinking, well, me being elected to this is putting me in a place of position and place of authority. And I think that's the thing that we've all seen go bad, and we've all seen that we want to protect and be careful in that. And I think Scripture just makes it abundantly clear that if we stick to Scripture and what Scripture says, this is the role of the deacon, we don't find ourselves in that category. And I think that's the part that we have to shepherd along the way, those that maybe are looking at it in that way, that's not the way that's not the purpose and the reason for our even our nomination system and the way that we nominate people to deacons in the life of our church specifically. That just kind of continued to roll through my head as you guys were talking about kind of the differences and just the way that falls in the life of every church. And we're not here to shape that out for other people. That's for them to. Other churches have to. They've got to determine what that is in the life of their church.
That's right, and that's the beauty of Baptist polity. Yeah. Every one of our churches gets to decide how they're going to handle this, take care of this, how they're going to define it, how they're going to work it, and And I think that's right and okay too, because the needs inside the life of the church need to dictate that. And now again, I would say it still needs to be driven biblically first.
Correct. Yeah.
But it's okay for those churches to shape those things out rightly.
I'll
No, you're good.
I was going to say something that I think possibly contributes to some of the murkiness in this for some people is because I have seen constitution bylaws, and I'm not saying ours do that. I don't think they do. They're limited. But what happens is in the First Timothy passage in chapter 3, you have qualifications for overseers and deacons.
Yeah.
And what I've seen is people attribute the qualifications for overseer, which is overseer, pastor, pastor, shepherd, elder. All of those terms are interchangeable. Overseer, pastor, elder, are all interchangeable. And then that lays out, obviously, you're an overseer, therefore must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, self-controlled, sensible, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not an excessive drinker, not a bully, but gentle, not quarrelsome, but not greedy. He must manage his own household, yada, yada, all the way down through there. And then you get down to verse 8, and then it says, deacons likewise should be worthy of respect, not hypocritical, not drinking a lot of wine, not greedy, so there are different, it delineates different offices for the different offices in the church, and people lump all of that together. And I can understand that, you would want your deacon to have some of the same qualities as your overseer, but very clearly in the Bible that there's delineated two different offices. And I think that contributes to some people's murkiness when it comes to that whole thing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was because I think we all came in with some idea where we're going to go with this. We just jumped to 1 Timothy, and we haven't gotten into Acts.
Yeah, so that's where I was.
So I think we need to get there. So, but I have, as y'all have talking, I'm formulating this concept. So I don't want to get off track, but I also want to get your feedback on this idea. I don't know that's a fully developed idea, but when you were talking, I kept having flashbacks, and I feel like I know it was David Platt, but I feel like it was Radical.
Okay.
Where he talked about that part of the, so follow me on this, the problem we're having in church culture right now, this was 15 years ago or whatever, is that when it comes to Sunday school teachers or leadership in the church, that we have a tendency to look at people who are successful in life and think that because they have leadership qualities that they should lead in the church.
Yeah.
But that is not necessarily like our nature is to look at someone who is a natural leader and say, why don't you teach Sunday school? Because you can lead, instead of looking at, do you know the Bible?
Yeah.
Do you actually live out the Bible? And so there has become this conflict because we look at people who lead well and we put them in leadership roles when the nature of the church is not such. So if that thought is muddling around in my mind and now your mind, if you look at the delineation of the difference between overseer and deacon, the overseer, elder, pastor, is more of a leader.
Yep.
And the role of deacon is more of a servant, right? So let me ask this question. We all are pastors. I would say that God has given all of us very strong leadership capability. Do you think if you were not a pastor, you would be a deacon? Because God has gifted you with the gift of leadership. Well, we are all servants.
Yeah. I would say no, not for me.
I would say no, too, for myself. I think if I was a layperson, I would be much better leading something than being a servant.
Well, and
not that I don't serve.
Again, I can just play this out for me initially. I mean, like just in my head.
Right.
I'm not saying that I couldn't somewhere down the line if I'm retired and well, like still healthy and want to serve the church. But my mindset would need to change as to what my role is.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty drastically.
So I think maybe that's some of, in my head, that's some of the answer. I think people are gifted
differently.
Very differently.
Yeah.
And so if I'm looking at, I have X amount of time, energy, whatever to invest in the body of believers, I know that my gifting is going to be best used musically and in leadership role because that's just how God has wired me.
Yeah.
And while I would love to be a deacon if I was a layperson, I don't think that's the best use of my gifts and talents. Does that make sense?
I'll push you on this for just a second.
Yeah, no, I'm asking to. I'm
Yeah.
chasing that thought.
I'm going to lay it out what happened to me because I was a deacon before I was a pastor. So when I was, as a 22-year-old single man, I was elected deacon at the church that I grew up in, Calvary Baptist Church, Kingsport. So 3 years before I was married, they asked me if I would serve. I was elected. I was ordained as a deacon, and I deeked, and I did all the things. And then it was in that same time that I was really struggling because I knew that the Lord was calling me to ministry, and for the period of time, for several years, I fought that. And y'all have heard that story, but it wasn't until I was 28, 29. I guess I was 29 years old when I finally, God won and I surrendered and I went, started seminary and everything, the whole thing. And obviously I resigned as a deacon when that happened. So I think for me, as I think about what you said, I think there's some value and truth in what you just said, but I also think that it could be a seasonal thing as a person matures and grows and finds themselves in what God's. Does that make sense?
It does.
Almost like my journey through the things in which I've served in, as I have just as I get older, as you mature, as you come to understand who you are and who God is, I've changed. I used to be youth and children, and now I'm not.
Right.
And so I think that there is something to that as well as you begin to continue to refine the gifts and skills and talents that God does give you.
Yeah. Jesus was a leader, but yeah, he was a servant. He even says the Son of Man came to be served, not to to serve, not to be served. And he exhibited that. And I think the difference for us, it's, even what you were saying when you were talking about, I see myself being a leader. Even you thinking about being a layperson, your natural tendency was to move towards the pastor. You were still almost moving in that direction. And I think that's because we've been called to that role. And I think it's hard for us, but I think in the end of it, I look at all of us, and I can say this about many pastors that I know, we are all servants as well. And I think we do serve our people, but there's a difference in the way that comes out for us. For me, it's the shepherding of the pastor, the role of the pastor. That I think we all shepherd, and we want to shepherd, and we desire to shepherd. And I also think from the standpoint of, every good leader is a good follower in some capacity. There's an element of being able to follow and to be led is a part of what makes good leaders good leaders. And so I think it is for, when I think of it from the standpoint, my mind also went to this, and I think we've seen this in the life of our church, and at least recently, it's something that is continuing to grow and develop in the life of our deacon nominations, that those who are seeking the role oftentimes are seeking it for leadership reasons rather than servant reasons. Does that make sense?
It does.
That whenever that those who are naturally serving because that's their draw, that I'm going to serve because that's who God's called me to be, those are the ones that we're looking at and saying, that's a deacon. Outside of the ones that are like, I should be a deacon.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
A
little bit.
It makes sense to me. So to go full circle in that, I think I agree with you when it comes to like us, because we should hold ourselves to that first 7 verses, and not the 8. I'm saying like if you remove that, but I get 100% what you're saying. So I think where the breakdown happens is because of all, in a lot of churches, the deacon nomination process is a popularity contest and not a fulfillment of those things. So what you're saying is what we have tried to do is say, here's someone serving.
Yep.
Let's make them a deacon,
Right.
not here's the person I know.
Because my natural tendency when you asked that question was to say, I don't know. It would all depend on what the church sees me
What the church,
in that role. Would they see me in a servant role, or would they see me?
So when you're appointing, when a church appoints people to be deacons who are more natural leaders and not viewing it as a servant role, then when there are gaps in the pastorate, they are stepping into that, which is, it should be when a pastor leaves, when there's a void of leadership, it should be uncomfortable for the deacons to lead, not natural.
That's exactly right.
That's where we begin to have this breakdown. And I've lived it. I think maybe not you, because
not quite the same.
It's not the same for the lead pastor, but we've all experienced
very much
the deacon who wants to step in and lead in the void of lead pastor leadership. And that should not be natural. But because we've put the wrong people there, then in the aftermath of that, whether they have trouble letting go or that's where the problem
that's exactly so. Like, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but for me, it would be hard for me to serve in that role and not set direction, vision, leadership, because like that's just kind of what it is. Who I am.
God has gifted you.
And so until that changes for me, I don't think that that's a healthy place for me to serve as a deacon. Because that's not the role. And if that is my gifting and that is my personality and all of those types of things, that is not the role. And so I need to be careful serving in a role that's not lining up with who I am. And so that's the whole thing for me, is that like I do serve on a couple boards where, I mean, that's not what I'm doing, right? And so I try to manage that, but still sometimes there's that friction and that struggle with those types of things or whatever else. Right. And so, but it doesn't negate that I'm still supposed to serve, and I feel like I do. But in the role of a deacon, there is a different head. There's a different lead. And if unless I can just fully submit and leave all of those things behind for those things to be done in the other way, it doesn't mean that I don't provide accountability on that end or whatever else. But I cannot come into that with this questioning mindset, this idea that this is what I'm supposed to be setting direction. I'm supposed to be doing this. That's the wrong. That's the wrong role. It's the wrong seat. And so that's why I say, like, I don't think I could. If I was not serving as pastor right now, I think it would be really hard for me to just be serving. I mean, that's the wrong wording, but it would be hard for me to be serving as a deacon because I know I have gotten comfortable with who I am. So anyway.
Another thing that you have to consider in this whole conversation, and this is just as it applies across the board to other Southern Baptist churches. You think about the average size of the Southern Baptist church is going to be 100, 150 people or less. Most of our churches, vast majority of our churches are that. And in that situation, you've got most of them are going to have a single pastor model.
That's right.
Yeah.
And therein lies the rub when that single pastor leaves. Who else is going to ride it out until the next one comes? It's generally going to be the deacons in most of those churches, the way that they set up their hierarchies.
We should write a book and bring a recommendation and tell them, when your pastor leaves, don't put the deacons in charge. Find your best Sunday school teacher and put them in charge temporarily.
And it could be that person is a deacon. I mean, I don't mean that to be like, but there's when churches get in trouble, it's in those times typically. It's in those times, or historically it has been those times, and that's the hard part. And
so serving in larger churches now, having experienced this for some years, I see the value, and I'm not saying every church has to get to this point, but there's a there is a value of having a diversification of pastorship in your situation. This is not going to happen.
No.
I'm not about to speak this into existence. But if you were to leave, we would just continue to function until we fill this position again.
Right.
There would not be a question. The deacons wouldn't have to say, okay, now we're going to step in, because we have the leadership ability in the rest of the pastoral staff to continue on.
But even in that, and this is in multiple staff situations for me, when I've had the chance to speak into a pastor leaving or whatever else and talk to the church, I would tell them, don't expect your staff to preach every Sunday.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not their role.
Yeah.
Understand they're called to the church to do these things. And when you complicate it because there's a vacancy or because of one of these things, you're messing things up.
No, I'll volunteer. I'll preach every Sunday if you want.
Find an interim pastor who can appreciate the staff and work with them to do that. Don't take people out of their role and function to go do something different. Okay, we go back to the Acts passage. That's exactly what's happening here, right? I mean, we look at, I'm going to read verses 1-5. It says, in those days, the disciples were increasing in number, and there arose a complaint against the Hellenistic Jews, against the Hebraic Jews, that their widows were being overlooked in daily distribution. The 12 summoned the whole company, and the disciples said, it would not be right for us to give up preaching the word of God to wait on tables. Brothers and sisters, select from among you 7 men of good reputation, full of spirit and wisdom, whom we can appoint to do this duty. But we will devote ourselves to prayer and the ministry of the word. This proposal pleased the whole company, so they chose, and it goes on to tell who they chose. They were being pulled away from their role to do something that was not their role. And so they came up and said, let us choose men that this is their role. I mean, again, in times of vacancies, it doesn't mean that we don't have to do something that we don't normally do, but let's try to stay committed to fulfilling the function that God has called us to all the time. On the bottom of every one of our job descriptions, it basically says, fulfill whatever is needed. All right. And we're going to do that. We're going to be committed to that. We're going to do that. We're going to make sure that the work of the ministry of the church is done. But understand that Austin's called here to lead us in worship, and Tiger's called here to lead us in discipleship, and Jason in our family ministry. And when we then say, oh, someone's gone, so you go do this, man, we just thrown off the dynamics of those callings that God has placed in our lives. There's a significance there. I would say there's a disobedience there. And that's what begins to lead us toward these problems that mess up. And so same thing with inside the life of our deacons. You hear the wording there. Waiting and serving and all of those types of things. There was a ministry to fulfill. And I think that's what we go back to. Every deacon is called to serve. Yeah. They are called to get into the dirt. They are called to serve. They are called to be a part of those types of things. And I would say that each one of them is called to do that somewhat uniquely within their personality. What has God gifted them to do? How has he gifted them? What has he gifted them in? How does that work? Now, it doesn't mean, again, I think about in our setting, right now, our deacons clean up every Wednesday night. Yeah. That's a part of their role that is set out, that they clean up after every one of our merge meals. It's an area where we're struggling. And yet, anyone that is a part of the deacon body should be willing and ready and able to do that type of thing. That doesn't mean that they don't have another gifting that, again, when a widow calls and needs some plumbing help at their house. Well, I'm not sending Scott. He's an electrician. What I'm saying is there's going to be some giftedness there in other ways. Some are going to be better gifted toward benevolence issues or financial issues or physical building issues or whatever else. There's some differences there, but there are some unique things that they're all called to be here for our services. They're all called to be involved in the life of our church. And if they're not doing those things, again, we got to think through what what is going on here? Do we have the right people in place with the right calling in their lives for those things?
I'm going to throw this out just as an example of, because we're coming off of a huge men's ministry event. And it was the first time that we've ever done a fish fry like this. I mean, it's the first time I've been a part of one here. And it was really the first time for most of everybody that I worked with that has never done it. And when it's the first time to do anything, you have an idea about what you're going to need and what it's going to take. And you lay these things out. You know, we've fed people before. I kind of understand how to do this, but there's always going to be like a handful of things that are like, oh man, I think about that. And so yesterday there was a few times where I'd walk up to somebody, hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me with this? And and there were all kinds of people that were brought to bear to make it happen, and it happened, and it went well, and we had way more people than we thought we were going to have, and it was great, and it worked out well. I was the last one to leave, but there were two guys that were the next to the last to leave, and those were two deacons.
Yeah,
and they were slaving in the kitchen. They were cleaning up the kitchen. They were cleaning the pots and pans. They were mopping the floor. They were throwing out the trash. And, and I didn't have to dictate every bit of that. Yep. They just did it. Yep. And I'll tell you this also, there's also several handfuls of guys who are not deacons who showed me something over the weekend that when it comes to nominations, I'm going to prayerfully think about, who I'm going to say. Right. And I think that is what we're talking about. When you see individuals that are just, they just want to serve. They want to see this thing be successful. I want to bring to bear what I can do and jump in and help where I can. And when you identify that, and when you see that, those are the people that you then approach and say, hey, let's just do this formally. You're already doing this. Like you say, the people that are like, hey, pick me, I'm a great servant, but you haven't seen them at anything.
Yeah.
They've not been there to do they've not been a part of the lifeblood of the church, integral into those things. And all the things that we do a bunch of stuff. Yeah. And they don't show up for that, but they want to show up to be a deacon. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those are the ones that you got to kind of watch. Yeah. And I totally agree with that. You want to identify those that are serving
but it's also the misconception of what the deacon does. Yeah. What their role is. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we did pretty good on that.
Yeah. That was
still a lot more we can flesh out. There may be a second episode.
We haven't gotten into the whole
we ain't gotten into qualifications. I think that's a second episode.
Maybe.
Because we're at 43 minutes already.
Yeah. That's the one.
We talked a little bit about it. Do you want to keep going, or we want
to? That's a y'all's call.
Let's land this ship. I don't want to talk about it again. No, okay. You want to?
Okay, you go have to split it. You're gonna have to split it.
Okay. What?
2 episodes. Because we're already.
Let's go 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Make it.
That ain't happening.
Okay, so 1 Timothy chapter 3.
This is a whole nother.
Pastor Corey read about.
I read the Acts passage.
No, a long time ago before I got
read it.
You did lay out.
I read it.
You talked about Timothy. Yeah, 1 Timothy passage.
Yeah,
about an overseer. Mm-hmm. So we've established that a deacon is different.
Yes.
So then
pick up in 8.
Verse 8. Deacons. Well, I'm in NIV. Y'all like CSB. So
no, you're good.
Deacons likewise are to be men worthy of respect, sincere, not indulging in much wine. They are not pursuing dishonest gain. They must keep hold of the deep truths of the faith with a clear conscience. They must first be tested, and then if there is nothing against them, let them serve as deacons. In the same way, their wives are to be women worthy of respect, not malicious talkers, but temperate and trustworthy in everything. A deacon must be the husband of but one wife and must manage his children and his household well. Those who have served well gain an excellent standing and a great assurance in their faith in Christ Jesus. Okay. That's the role. That's the qualifications.
Right.
How many of you have known the deacon who did not manage his household well?
Yeah, sure.
How many of you known a pastor who didn't manage his household well?
Yeah, well, and I would even say that. Okay, so we have to be careful about how we qualify that too, because just because there are issues or problems does not mean that things are not managed well.
Right.
So let's just take a rebellious child,
because there's sin of somebody else.
That's exactly right.
Free will exists.
Just because a child is going through a rough time or a difficult time or a time of rebellion in their teen does not mean
Correct.
that a husband is not managing a household. So all of that to say is I think we have to be careful. I think one of the things that I draw out in that is verse 10. They must be tested first. Sometimes we are way too quick to move toward someone. And I think that sometimes it is really, really good for us to just take a little time to sit and to see and to understand. I would rather, y'all have heard me say this before, I would rather do without a deacon than to move quickly, because I think, y'all heard my thoughts on the role. I'm not seeing this as a 3-year role where they roll off. When we make someone a deacon, they're my problem for the next 20 years, right? I mean, so if I don't mean that as they are going to be a problem. I'm joking around, but I think this is serious. I think it's something that we need to be very aware of, and so I think that's important for us to understand. So, yeah.
And I think just one related issue that I've experienced with that, I've had a situation where there was a deacon serving our church, previous church. He had adopted two kids, and they were in their teenage years, and one was particularly difficult. And the man who was the deacon, the father, did all he could. I mean, he provided as much support and resource and love and discipline and nurture, everything that you would expect somebody to do when their kid is just acting out and doing stupid stuff. But his integrity was such that he came to the chairman of the deacons and to the pastor and said, according to this scripture, I shouldn't be serving right now. And he resigned. And, they both tried to talk him out of it. And he goes, I just don't feel comfortable moving forward. I've got to take care of my house, and I don't feel like I should continue this. And so I think absolutely, it's in there for a reason. When it's in God's word, you have to pay heed to it. And I think every situation is going to be its own kind of deal that you have to flesh out. Sometimes it's not just black and white, in other words.
And I think also, going back to what you said a while back, I think that there is space there for a time. We think of it as managing your household well if your children are rebellious or something like that. But there are also seasons of life, that the busiest season of your parenting life, where it may be time to step back because I can't fulfill this role because I need to manage my house. I need to manage my children.
Right. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. It's hey, for this season I'd be in that right now. You are coming out of it almost.
Coming out of it a little bit. Yeah.
That it is right now, managing my household needs to take a lot more of my focus and being a parent. And so that can be a good thing.
Yeah.
So then here we are. It says a man. It talks about their wife, and it must be a husband of one wife.
Yeah.
Does it have to be a man?
Yeah. So I'll go 2 things on that. The husband of one wife, I think I've dealt with this before. But culturally, we are dealing with a polygamous time and a time where men were often involved in relationships with multiple women. And it was a part of the culture to kind of be okay with that.
Yep.
And so I truly read that as a one-woman man is really one of the best literal translations or looks at that I've ever seen. And so a man that is dedicated, committed to his spouse or whatever else. I don't think that is specifically dealing with divorce. Some disagree with me or whatever else. But just putting that out there, that's my point of view on that. Then secondly is again, as far as male and female deacons, if we say deacons can't be female, we are saying the Bible is wrong because we see there are female deacons in the Bible. I do not necessarily think we are mandated to have female deacons.
Yeah.
And again, there is a difference on that. And so I believe that ladies can serve as deacons. I don't know that I want to dive into, do I think it's best if they do or don't, because I do think that there are some dynamics that are different whenever you begin to mix male and female deacons and or go about those types of things. And I think that most of the time what we see inside the life of the New Testament church was males as deacons, but in no way am I against the idea of female deacons because I know we see it biblically. And so that's kind of where I go with that inside the life of the church. Also, we'll just kind of pair all of that to say is every church I've ever served in, I've always worked within the dynamics of what the church polity was. I'm either going to work with inside it or I'm going to lead it to change. Yeah. And I'm going to work with inside it until I lead it to change if it needs to be changed. And so all of that to say is I think, again, when we get into trouble with some of these things is when we think we can just throw all of that away and it doesn't matter because we disagree with it. And so I think our polity, our Constitution, bylaws, and policies that we have set up are really, really pretty good. I mean, like they will constantly need changing. I mean, all of them always do. But really, I like the way ours is set up and the way it works as a whole. So, yeah. Did I hit on most of that?
Yeah. And if you're wondering, biblically, when Paul points out Phoebe in Romans 16, he specifically describes her, and the Greek word is diakonos, which is the word that we get deacon from, which is the servant. And she certainly was a deacon that was fundamentally responsible for carrying, some of Paul's letters to some of the churches. And so it's very difficult. It's a very you're crawling out a limb that's very difficult to stand on if you say that there were no female deacons, because there certainly were. And anyway, again, it is a cultural thing, because obviously, that description specifically talks about males, and it's not something that. This is not the hill that you're going to die on related to this topic, because, it's kind of a tertiary issue. But the fact is, there are thousands of Southern Baptist churches that could not operate if there were not women who were doing the things that they're doing.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly.
And we all know that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's certainly many women serving our church in very faithful fashion who are not deacons. They're just servants, like we talked about, because that's what they do.
Yeah. Well, I even think it's interesting there in Romans 16, in CSB, it describes who is a servant.
Yeah.
The word is deacon. So again, there are, again, it just points to what is a deacon supposed to be. It is a servant. It is someone who is to serve the church and to help fulfill and multiply the role of the pastor and the overseers inside the life of the church, meeting needs inside the church. So, yeah.
So anyway, I mean, that's one of the elephants in the room, and we've addressed it. And I think going back to, there is a hang up for a lot of churches, and I've evolved in this myself, an understanding who's qualified to serve as a deacon relative to the question of divorce. And I think, again, it's a case-by-case situation. When you were, if you were divorced before you came to faith in Jesus Christ, I have a difficulty holding that against you. There are numbers of individuals, gentlemen that I have known who were unbelievable servants of the church who were prohibited from ever being a deacon because of a divorce in their past. And several of them were in that situation where they were lost. And lost people are going to act like lost people. And when you understand a person comes to faith and then, or has a divorce situation, comes to faith, and then begins to live dozens or decades as a faithful husband and as a faithful leader in the church, otherwise, who serves the church, humbly, it's very difficult for me to say, oh, no, when we are just interpreting those. It's an interpretation of husband of one wife that's Xing it. Nowhere in there says divorced individuals can serve as deacons. Right. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth on it.
I think there's a whole load of New Testament passages specifically that you have to wrestle with cultural context, right? Yeah. We know a lot of them. We talk about them a lot. One thing that's important for us to remember is it always is a secondary or tertiary issue.
Yes.
It is never a primary issue that we are wrestling those things with. So remembering that in conversation with people we disagree with, A of all. B of all, there is, when you're talking about contextual things in the New Testament, you can take that a lot of ways. But I'm looking not even at the scope of all of Pauline letters, just in this one, just in this letter to Timothy, in chapter 2, you have his command about women not braiding their hair, not wearing pearls or gold or expensive clothes. We understand that to be contextual. Yep. Right after that, we like to pull out verse 11 and 12, 13, 14 about women not teaching and hold that not cultural, even though right before it was cultural. We understand that passage is cultural. You go on to chapter 5 when it talks about widows and being put on the widows list. If you're under 60, you shouldn't be put on the widows list to be taken care of. We understand that most of 1 Timothy is speaking to the culture of the day. So I think it's important if I would just say to those who may disagree with the general consensus of us, just we're open to having those conversations, but also I would like you to do your research about the cultural context, even specifically right here of 1 Timothy, and wrestle with those passages, and understand that these are tertiary issues that we all have wrestled with and are going to have to kind of make up our mind on.
Yeah. And the fact is, some people are going to be dogmatic about this. Yeah. And yet, when you look at the Baptist Faith and Message, you look at the things that we agree upon, the things that we've all said, this is what we agree upon. This is why we are and who we are. You've got to recognize that was written very specifically to be broad enough to encompass these little nuanced differences that we may have of opinion about secondary and tertiary issues. Yeah. And that should never be something that becomes a unity issue that brings that builds a barrier between a brother and a sister in Christ because of I believe this and you believe that. Hey, we're going to continue to serve together and tell people about Jesus. Mm-hmm. I've lived through issues where people glom onto one thing that they are absolutely, this is the hill they're going to die on.
The color of the carpet.
Yeah. and this is, we're going to go to war over this. And it's very unfortunate because that's not the spirit of what it was all about.
Yeah. I think for me, as I was growing up, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. And so I would have looked at it from that standpoint that deacons cannot be women. But I think for me, it was because in my mind, I had not yet biblically untied overseer and deacon. Mm-hmm. To me, I think those two things were still tied together in my brain, more than I think they should have been. And I think as I grew in my faith and my knowledge of Scripture and understanding of God's Word, as we already kind of fleshed out that overseer and deacons, those two things begin to separate. That changes even my approach in the way that I can see deacons being females that are serving in that capacity. And so even that in of itself, I think so many of our Southern Baptists, and I'm not going to blanket it because I think that's dangerous if we do that. But for many, I think there is still a holdup on that side because of their tie and their misunderstanding of deacon.
Yeah.
Just what a deacon is and should be and their role is. And so I think that's some of it too that goes back even to that. I'm not saying it's all of it. There's other facets of it, but I think that's some of it as well.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
1 hour. we I wouldn't say we've exhausted this topic, but we've handled it.
We covered it
about as well as we could, and we hope that you were edified in the process. If you have any questions about that, you can always reach out to us and just do it kindly. All right. Thank you for listening. As always, if you would like to offer your suggestions, we are open to that. About future topics, we'd be happy to address some of those things. All right. Say bye, fellas.
See ya. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Seymour from the Front Pew. Our sole desire for this podcast is to glorify God by educating and encouraging His body. If you would like to learn more about anything you've heard today, feel free to reach out by email at staff@seymourfbc.org or by visiting our website at seymourfbc.org. If you're located near our community and do not have a church home, come worship with us at 10:15 a.m. on Sunday morning. Until then, we pray God's richest blessings on you and yours as you love God, love others, make disciples, and live the life.